Once your chili seedlings have emerged from the soil, you guys have a ton of questions for me, and in this video I'm going to try and answer as many of them as I can. In case you didn't know, my name is Sean, also known as ChilliChump, and on my channel I share my love of chilies with all of you. Let's start off with these guys over here. One of the more common questions I get is when to remove your propagator lid. The quick answer is as soon as possible after germination. The long answer, unfortunately, we have many seeds and they may germinate at different times dependent on the type of seed, the plant, the variety, the species. It could be a lot of different factors. Plants typically breathe through their leaves, on the underside of the leaves, through pores called stomata. Now, if it's too humid, it's not able to do that effectively. Another important thing to consider is the way that plants process water and nutrients. If we take a look at this little plant here, it's developed a root system below the soil, and that root system is pulling in water as well as nutrients. So it's leaching out the nutrients from the soil, or if I am feeding it, then it'll be pulling it from that moisture as well. Then the water is transpired through the leaves. Now, if it wasn't able to transpire that water, it's going to stop pulling up as much water and therefore stop pulling up as much nutrients, which means you're going to stunt the growth of your plants. Now, what happens when you're in a humid environment? It makes it very difficult for these plants to transpire effectively. There's two ways to fix this. Firstly, take off the propagator lid. Secondly, I use fans. Now, these are not only to help strengthen these plants, so it'll help these plants move around and the stem will harden a little bit better, but more importantly, it'll move the air around so there's no stagnant, stale air, and these plants can not only transpire more effectively, but they can also breathe more effectively. Yes, you can open up vents on these lids, but they're not very effective unless you can get some sort of airflow in there. With a propagator like this, we do have vents on the side as well, so you can create somewhat of an airflow in there if you can blow a fan in there or create some sort of convection current. Once a few of your plants have their first true leaves fully established, then I would say you've got probably a week, maybe 10 days before you need to consider removing the lid. The next question I get a lot of is how to effectively water your seedlings. Now, if you watch any of my beginner's guides or most of my videos, I tell you to bottom water. And the reason for that is if you have a look, this one here has been top watered and you can see quite a bit of algae growth. That's not great, but that'll go away after a while. What you want to see is something like that. Even that has had some algae growth, but I've stopped top watering just to show you the difference between these two, and you can see an obvious color difference. Now, how do you bottom water? There's a couple ways. You could go and pour water directly into a tray like this and flood it to about halfway, then take out the seed tray and empty out the excess water after about 5 minutes, because you don't want it sitting in water. These roots need to breathe as well. The way that I actually do it is I have another tray. Yes, I know this water looks a little murky, but that's because I have been using this to bottom water my plants, and obviously some debris is going to come out of it. Keep the level where it would be about that far below the top of my seed trays that I'm going to dip in here. You don't want it to overflow into the seed tray. There's another trick here as well, which is to make sure that this water is at the same temperature at least as your seedlings. And that's because you don't want to shock them. Adding cold water to something that's fairly warm, then it's going to set these plants back. It's going to stunt their growth for, it could be a day, it could be a week, depending how cold the water is. Same thing goes for soil when you're potting up. You want to get that soil to the same temperature as the plants that you're transplanting. Think about what you'd do in terms of adding a goldfish to a new pond. You would be making sure that the water the goldfish is in inside that little bag is also going to be the same temperature as the pond it's going into. Now, I know that this tray is ready for water because it is very light. Now, all I'm going to do is stick that in there. And, well, it's floating a little bit. That's another way I know that it needs water. But I'm going to stick it in there for about 5 minutes. It's going to absorb all the water it needs. I'll then take it out and I'll put it back inside this tray here. Something else I wanted to point out. Do you see those blue things in there? Those are spacers. And I put those underneath these trays. As awesome as these trays are, they're from Container Wise. I'll try and leave a link in the description below. They are seriously heavy duty and you won't be replacing them for many, many years. They do have one drawback. Unfortunately, at the bottom of the tray, if you have a look here, there is no groove to allow water out. So if one of these cells happen to be sitting on a flat area, so if it's sitting over here, then potentially water is not going to be allowed to flow out and it's going to block it and you're going to end up having a cell that is just stacked with water. By having these things underneath, it lifts them up and it allows the water to drain out. This is one of the benefits of having some spare propagators is I can heat this water up. I've got it set at 20 degrees Celsius, which is what my grow room is roughly at. I have my little temperature probe in the water, and that keeps this water at that temperature. I don't leave it on all the time. I just switch it on a couple hours before I know I'm going to be watering my plants, so it doesn't waste electricity. If you don't have a spare heated propagator, you can just use a plain old tray with a heat mat underneath, and again, you can maintain that temperature that way. The third most common question I get is about lighting, and more specifically, when to turn it on. Chili seeds do not need darkness to germinate. So you could effectively put your grow lights over them from the second you plant them. However, that's just going to be a waste of electricity, and chili seeds, even the fastest of them, are going to take at least 5 days till they start germinating. So on day 5, yeah, stick your light on and there you go. But at the very least, as soon as you see a little loop appearing, so you can kind of see one over there, as soon as that loop starts appearing, get your lights over your plants. And if you're using a sunny windowsill, obviously make sure that they're exposed to that sunlight. I'm going to answer one more bonus, a very important question, and that is, when do I start feeding my seedlings? The short answer is, don't feed your seedlings. You do not need to. At least for the first month, there should be plenty of nutrients inside your soil so that those plants can grow and spread their roots. And by the time the end of the first month comes along, you're going to be potting it up into fresh soil and a bigger pot. Now, if you do actually go ahead and feed your seedling, I know it is very tempting. I did that in some of my first seasons. You might actually stunt its growth somewhat, because think about it this way. If you are feeding your seedling, and it's especially if you're feeding from the top, but if you're constantly feeding it and you're giving it nutrients, then there's no reason for that root ball to spread any further, because there's a ready supply of nutrients available all the time. By not feeding it, what's happening is that root system is looking for more nutrients. It's desperate to get as many nutrients as it can. And it'll spread. So by the time you do pot it up, you should have a very compact root ball that is well established. And when you go into the new pot, same deal. For the first month and a half, depending on the pot size, you're going to have more than enough nutrients in there for that plant to do its thing. I hope these answered some of your questions. If you have any other questions for me, let me know down in the comments below, or you can get in contact with me through my website, ChilliChump.com. If you are still looking for chili seeds, I have plenty available at ChilliChumpSeeds.com. And I hope that your season has got off to a fantastic start. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, stay spicy.